and welcome onto the show Andrew Wylie, the 31-year-old offensive lineman with the Commanders. At 6'5", he has played tackle, he has played guard, he's moved all over the place, and just last week he re-signed to come back to Washington for a fourth season, what will be his 9th year in the NFL. Andrew, thanks for the time on Grant and Danny here in D.C. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show, guys.
Absolutely. So let's just start with how this played out, that you avoid the market and you decide you're going to re-up, stay in Washington, and be a part of what they got going on here. What were the conversations like, and why did you want to be in D.C.?
It started out, with just the feeling that, I knew I wanted to stay here in D.C., and so, that was the first thing, I expressed when I left the building, at the end of the season last year. So, I told them I would love nothing more than to be back. And then, throughout contract negotiations, my agents, staying real close with these guys, and they're working hard on the numbers. And, we got real close. And, to me, that number, such a great deal, for me and my family and my agent. And we all, and the Commanders, and we loved it. And so, we really didn't feel the need to go test free agency at all. So we're just super stoked to stay in town.
I love hearing that, and it's a good sign for the organization, that players want to be in the building. 2 years ago, you're an integral part of a team that gets to the NFC Championship game. This past season didn't go nearly as well. Are the vibes for you similar, though, this offseason from a year ago, despite the results? Like, just how different is the feel? It sounds like you still wanted to be around, so there's still some good juju there.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were in this spot last year going through a contract restructure, I told those guys, I signed back and I took this deal because, this culture here, and we're so close to, getting to the big one and, trying to get a ring out of this thing. And so, I still believe that as an organization, we're so close to that. And, that's truly what my goal is, is just to show up, work hard, be a good teammate, and get a ring out of this thing. So, truly that's the goal.
You've played all over the offensive line, both guard spots. You've played tackle. I mean, what's on your business card at this point after staying in D.C.?
Just expanding that resume any way I can, I guess. It's fun, and that's something that we experienced, this last season in training camp. Bringing in the young and talented Josh Conerly, who was just holding down that right side. So, for me, to get in that lineup in any way, he had to rotate a few positions, and we had a guy unexpectedly, go down and practice, on the left side. So I jumped over there and, kind of, brought back some of that undrafted stuff, in my early days. Truly trying to figure out what position that I can excel at. And, so I've been coached well at them all. And, so I guess it's just however I can get in that lineup. I don't think anything about it. I just like being out there. So
everybody talks about the flex tackle, who's the third guy that can play either side. You don't hear that term as much for guard, but it's valuable to have one. And Andrew Wylie's become that guy on the interior for Washington. He's obviously got the versatility to be kicked outside if need be at tackle as well. He's joining us here on Grant and Danny. The O-line is actually one of the groups I felt best about coming into the offseason because of the depth, where a guy like Brandon Coleman, a third-round pick, was a backup last year because you've played a ton and your depth at this point, because Allegretti can do so many things. But now if you look at it, we're not really sure what's going to happen at left guard after Chris Paul played so well. He's a free agent. And I was really surprised by the release of Tyler Biadasz, which creates a vacancy there, although Nick Allegretti resigns today. Maybe that's his job in waiting. Were you surprised to see what happened to your buddy Biadasz there this week?
Yeah, I think it caught everybody by surprise. And, he's a hell of a player and a great teammate too. So, I know he's going to land on his feet. And, I think, there was some shock, on the players, but things like that happen with every team every season. So there's always going to be a handful of those, but, I will reiterate the fact that, he's a great room guy and a hell of a player as well. So
Allegretti's been one of my favorite guys to get to know over the last couple of years. He's just a mensch, really cool dude. He gets re-upped today and paid to stay around, and at least for now, it looks like could be the center. What did you see when you got to see him play some center last year out of him?
Yeah, and just for him being, such a close friend with me. I mean, we're dang near family, and so we've talked in depth about it, and I feel like that's truly a position where he wants to play the most and where he feels like he can excel at the most. Just being at the helm of the offense, getting us going in the middle. So, I think that's where he thrives his best, and so I'm really excited to get out there in OTAs and training camp and see how he takes handle of things.
For a few of the Commanders fans that might not connect the dots, obviously Wylie and Allegretti were winning titles together in Kansas City. You guys are basically like on the same bus all the time. You come from the Chiefs to Washington. You're getting, extended and staying around here this offseason together. Like, you talked about your relationship. I mean, I would imagine your families are pretty close. So you guys, when you win championships together, that stays around. That cologne stays for a long time.
Yes, it definitely builds, a stronger type of bond, one that lasts for a while. And yeah, I know me and the wife were thinking about going down to Chicago and seeing him and his family soon anyway. So yeah, we are close, families wide and everything. So I'm just, super stoked that, we get another chance to go out there and try to get a ring together again.
Who pays for dinner? I mean, you guys both got new contracts. Who's picking up the steak tab?
Splitting that thing right down the middle.
That's the right way to do it, probably. Andrew Wylie on Grant and Danny. What about Josh Conerly? Rough start to the year, but one of the things we looked at last season was you could not have scheduled a worse first month of edges for a rookie tackle. It was like, let's line up all the best pass rushers in the league for this kid to play. And as the year went on, he got better and better. What's your assessment of him?
I feel like, that second part of that, like as the year went on, he got better and better. He is, such a smart young man. And, that's just a test of how well he takes his coaching. And, every week it was always something new. We're developing, a punch plan, a set angle and things like that. And, he took, every bit of coaching from coaches down to players too. We had great mentors in the room last year. And so, he's truly just soaking it all in, and you could tell that it was clicking. And so he has all the gifts in the world to go out there and be a franchise tackle. I mean, the kid, has one of the smoothest pass sets I've seen in a long time. And so if he continues to develop and take this coaching like he did his rookie season, I mean, the sky's the limit for Josh.
He also is the youngest looking NFL player in history. I don't know if, you've been around 9 years now in the league, so you're old enough to be one of the true veterans. But when you see players that now look like they could be in high school football, that has to make you feel a little older. That's what it did for me.
It definitely it ages you a little bit, seeing all the young rookies come in. And the thing that surprised me most about him, he's not a caffeine guy. He's you make it through college, you think you're acquire a little taste for some coffee, but he avoids it at all costs, and I feel like that can harden you up a little bit. Maybe it could help with some facial hair or something.
Yeah, that might be what it is. That's the trick. Now we know.
Now we know.
Eastern Michigan product Andrew Wylie on Grant and Danny here with us for a few minutes on The Fan. So we got to know Bobby Johnson the last few years as your O-line coach. He's one of the few guys on offense that have left the building, but Darnell Stapleton was promoted. His assistant. Fans don't really know him. What can you tell us about the new O-line coach?
He former player for the Steelers, and highly touted player as well. He played guard. He played offensive line over there. He's been to the big game. He knows what it takes, and so just having his outlook, and him being in that head role, more outspoken role this year, I think is going to help us a ton. He's super even keel on game day. His coaching points are short and to the point and accurate. And so, he knows so much about the game and he communicates it very well. And so I'm just super stoked to have, Stape, at the helms of the O-line room, because, just what he showed day in and day out last year, proved that he was ready for that role somewhere. And so I'm just glad that we'll be together for this one.
Well, the O-line has to be fired up about the road ahead here. David Blau takes over, another internal promotion, and he's talked a lot. He came on our show a couple weeks ago, and one of the things he really harped on was Marion running pass and play action, wanting to get under center more often. When you hear those things as an O-lineman, what comes to mind?
Yeah, it really helps. Not really setting that type of offense that, it's either you're all one way or all the other way. And so he's truly a student of the game, former quarterback. He knows so much, about the intricacies of an offense. And so, that sounds good to hear because when, the defense doesn't know what to expect, it makes the offense easier to move the ball. And so, marrying up all those different types of plays, it sounds great. And so Blau is such a young, talented mind in this league, and I feel like he's going to excel a lot.
So just to tap into your expertise as a player, I look up a lot of the numbers on the good offenses, percentage under center versus in the gun, and there is a correlation, so there's something to it. Is there, as a blocker, if you're up front at guard, is the difference of being under center versus in the gun even noticeable play to play, or what would you tell me about that?
Not necessarily. Certain plays, yes. If you're faking the ball or rolling out a certain way, or it's a dive, or you're handing it off. Mainly, it's just that defensive tackle's alignment might change a little. He might tighten down a little closer to the center because it makes him a few inches closer to the quarterback, and so they can use that as an advantage, using their get off. But honestly, it doesn't really change too much up front.
All right, as a guy who's been all over the line, Andrew Wylie on G&D, what would you say, this is actually kind of fun, what do you think is the most difficult position to play on the offensive line of the five?
I would probably have to say tackle, and then, out of the five, left tackle. It really just depends on your side of strength, your post foot and what hand you feel stronger throwing. But it's not easy switching from side to side. So I would say left tackle just because, something does go a little south. The quarterback doesn't necessarily have eyes on you. So
yeah, there's no net. It's like being a trapeze artist out there on that island.
Yes, and so it can truly feel like that sometimes, but that's why we got the big guy over there holding it down. So,
all right, the last one then I would ask you, just in terms of kind of you playing analyst for a second. I was doing a pod last week with Logan Paulson, longtime NFL tight end, and we were talking about length of arms mattering or not, because there's so much talk about this kid Reuben Bain, top 10 projected pick out of Miami, having the shortest arms at his position since 1999. And I'm not suggesting you watch the tape or know anything about him, but in terms of actually blocking and the length of an edge or someone across from you, underrated, overrated, length of a D lineman, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I tend to not, put too much merit into, the physical stats because, I think that, you can tell certain type of edge rushers can get the job done, with just extreme effort and not giving up on a play. And I feel like those certain intangibles that get measured, they're kind of attributes, positive attributes, but not necessarily negatives. So I think, if you're just looking at how hard a guy works, and, how true he is to his craft and how much he wants to get better are the true things you need to look at. And then all those, body type measurements and comparisons, they really only can help an argument, in my opinion. They don't necessarily hinder a player.
Andrew Wylie on Grant and Danny. All right, before we let you go, this is how we wind down a lot of our player interviews. Some non-football fun questions just to get to know you a little bit here.
Yeah, sure.
You get a cheat meal. No one's judging you. You could be as fat as you want to. What is your meal?
Oh, man, this one's too real for me. I'm a big fan of Culver's. I think to me it's an elite fast food burger. Fresh patties, never frozen. I could talk all day about it. But, I'm probably going to get 2 double butter burgers, all the condiments, cheese, curd, onion ring, a concrete, mixer. Maybe a 4-piece tender is a nice kicker at the end too. So
let's go. You are getting after it. By the way, not having a Culver's here is criminal. They are so good.
It really does limit your fast food burger options.
Well, I had never had it until a couple years ago, and I had a couple buddies in the Midwest that are like, you got to try this, you got to do this. And I just now do not pass it up. If we're somewhere and I see one and it's lunchtime, we're eating at Culver's because you don't know when the next time you're going to get to do it is.
Exactly. It's to the point where if you see a sign on the highway and it says oh, the Culver's is like 15 miles away. You really do think about it. You're like, we could really handle this 45-minute detour for this.
You're like, this is kind of going to derail my day, but all right, we'll figure it out.
Worth it.
It sounds like you could be the answer to this, but you can't say yourself. Eating contest, offensive lines together, who's going to win?
You saying our offensive line?
Yeah, or it could be any teammate you've ever had, I guess, if someone's memorable and epic from Kansas City. But yeah, just like, wow, you put on a show.
This is going to be a weird answer because he does it with like healthy foods. But Sam Cosme, he's got this Viking frame to him.
He does,
and he can just house plates and plates of food, and but it's not necessarily bad for you, because he cares about his body and how he wants his food to work for him. So not necessarily the Culver's type deal, but he can put down some calories for sure.
Favorite show you've binged on Netflix?
It might honestly be our current watch. We're going through The Wire right now.
Yeah, great.
It's incredible. Yeah, Detective McNulty.
That's right.
And everything. So we just finished season 4. We got one more season left, and speaking of binging, we'll probably get that done this week.
It's probably the best show of all time. And then lastly, a teammate of yours has to be a stand-up comedian. Who are you picking? Hour-long show. They've got to go up and do like a 10-minute set to open for a comedian.
So I've had the blessing and the opportunity to have a locker in the same section as Von Miller last year. And, some of the stuff that he talks about off the top of his head is just absolutely hilarious. Like, we'd have guys like just cracking up in our row of lockers, and then we'd have guys coming over, seeing what we're laughing about. And it's just Vaughn talking about life. And so I feel like he could do that with a mic in his hand and be pretty successful at it.
Just holding court. All right, then finally, the best gift you've gotten from a quarterback, like those famous, the quarterback gave you something things. What's the one you used the most or enjoyed the most?
Well, this was, a little while ago. I am a watch guy. It's one of the, few things I'll spend some money on. It comes with one of my mentors early on was a big watch guy too. So I got into it early in the league, and one of the wildest gifts I've ever received in my life was a Rolex watch from a quarterback, a little engraving in the back with your name. And, that's something I wear, every week. So, I think about it often, and, it was, one of those gifts that some thought went into, and, it's always nice being an offensive lineman and feeling cared about.
That is Hall of Fame.
But plenty of great gifts in my time. It's one of the things that the quarterbacks all do well, and super thankful to all my guys.
You guys deserve it, man. You get, we're sitting there tweeting about you if you miss one block in 68 snaps about what a bad game it was. Like, you better get a Rolex out of the thing at the end.
Yeah, it was one of those gifts that definitely felt over the top, but super appreciated.
Well done. Well, Andrew Wylie back in D.C., an important part of the depth of this offensive line, very likely to play an important role this coming season as Washington reshapes its front. Thanks so much for a few minutes. Really appreciate it.
Hey, appreciate you guys.